Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Sreegowri. I'm Additional Professor from the Department of Conservative Dentistry and Endodontics, Yenepoya Dental College. Today I'll be discussing on the topic Class 1 Cavity Preparation for Silver Amalgam Restorations. What is the specific learning objective for this topic? By the end of this topic, one should be able to understand what is a Class 1 Cavity Preparation, to understand the various methods to prepare Class 1 cavity preparation for silver amalgam restoration, and to know the various types of Class 1 cavity preparations. To give an introduction to this topic, whenever demineralization becomes dominant and remineralization fails, a carious lesion will develop. There are other causes which can also create defects on the crown or the root surface, like developmental defects in the enamel surface, chemically stimulated dissolution or erosion, and physical abrasion. So all these problems can lead to sufficient loss of the tooth structure, which will require repair and replacement. Tooth preparation is the most important fundamental procedure of operative dentistry. So it is very important for every clinician to be well aware of all the fundamentals of the tooth preparation. The term cavity preparation was used earlier, but now many indications for the treatment of teeth are not due to caries, and therefore the preparation of tooth is no longer referred to as cavity preparation but as tooth preparation. So coming to the various classifications of tooth preparation, Dr. Green-Verdiman-Black in the year 1908 gave classification for cavities according to the anatomic areas involved and associated type of treatment. There are various stages to tooth preparation. It includes initial tooth preparation and the final tooth preparation. Now, what are the steps which are included in the initial tooth preparation? Step 1 is outline form and initial depth. Step 2 is primary resistance form. Step 3 is primary retention form, and step 4 is convenience form. The final tooth preparation stages includes the following steps. That is step 5, removal of any remaining infected dentine or old restorative material if indicated. Step 6 is pulp protection if indicated. Step 7 is secondary resistance and the retention forms. Step 8 is procedures for finishing the external walls. Step 9 is final procedures of cleaning, inspecting and sealing. Coming to the topic proper, it is Class 1 tooth preparation for silver amalgam restoration. What is a Class 1 cavity? All pit and fissure restorations are termed Class 1 cavities. This will include restorations on the occlusal surface of premolars and molars, restorations on the occlusal 2/3 of the facial and the lingual surfaces of molars, and restorations on the lingual surfaces of maxillary incisors. Now, what is a line angle? What is a point angle? Line angle is a junction of two planar surfaces along a line, and point angle is a junction of three planar surfaces along a point. So, Class 1 cavity preparation has got 4 point angles and 8 line angles. Now, what are the various line angles? Line angles are faciopulpal, distofacial, distopulpal, distolingual, linguopulpal, mesiolingual, mesiopulpal and mesiofacial. Coming to the point angles, they are distofaciopulpal, distolinguopulpal, mesiolinguopulpal and mesiofaciopulpal. Now first we'll see what is a conservative Class 1 amalgam tooth preparation. Conservative tooth preparation is recommended to protect the pulp, to preserve the strength of the tooth and to reduce the deterioration of the amalgam restoration. What is a clinical procedure for doing the same? First, we need to isolate the operating site with a rubber dam. A pre-operative occlusal adjustment is necessary of the involved adjacent teeth. Coming to the resistance principle, first we need to extend around the cusp to conserve the tooth structure and to prevent the internal line angles from approaching the pulp horns too closely. Next, keep the facial and the lingual marginal extensions as minimum as possible between the central groove and the cusp tip. Extend the outline to include the fissures, thereby placing the margins on relatively smooth sound tooth structure. Minimally extend into the marginal ridges without removing the dentinal support. Eliminate all the weak wall of enamel by joining two outlines that come close together, that is less than 0.5 mm apart. Now extend the outline form to include the enamel undermined by caries. Enameloplasty is done on the terminal ends of shallow fissures in order to conserve the tooth structure. Also establish an optimal conservative depth of the pulpal wall. A number 245 burr with the diameters head length is 3 mm and tip diameter is 0.8 mm, or a small number 330 burr is recommended to prepare the conservative class 1 tooth preparation. This picture depicts the diagram of the number 245 burr. Enter the deepest or most carious pit with a punch cut. Punch cut is performed by orienting the burr parallel to the long axis of the tooth crown. The burr is inserted first into the faulty pit. It provides increased visibility for the mesial extension. The burr should be positioned so that its distal aspect is directly over the distal pit, minimizing extension into the marginal ridge. Proper depth of 1.5 mm should be established at the central fissure. Depending on the cuspal incline, the depth of the prepared external walls will be 1.5 to 2 mm. The pulpal depth is usually 0.1 to 0.2 mm into the dentine. Distal extension into the distal marginal ridge to include a fissure or caries will require a slight tilting of the burr distally. This creates a slight occlusal divergence to the distal wall to prevent undermining the marginal ridge of its dentinal support. For premolars, what marginal ridge thickness has to be preserved? For premolars, the marginal ridge should not be less than 1.6 mm or 2 diameters of the end of a 245 burr. Now, what is it for a molar? For molars, this minimal distance is 2 mm. Primary resistance form is provided by flat pulpal floor in sound tooth structure to resist the forces that are directed in the long axis of the tooth and to provide a strong, stable seat for the restoration. Minimal extension of the external walls will reduce the weakening of the tooth. It should have a strong and ideal enamel margin. Sufficient depth of 1.5 mm to result in adequate thickness of the restoration should be provided to provide resistance to fracture and wear. Primary retention form is provided by the parallelism or slight occlusal convergence of two or more opposing external walls. The tooth preparation wall, preferably with a cavo surface angle not greater than approximately 100 degrees. This would produce a distinct margin for amalgam of no less than 80 degrees. Now, what is the final tooth preparation step? It includes removal of remaining defective enamel and infected dentine in the pulpal floor and remaining pit and fissure remnants. No liner or base is indicated for ideal or shallow depth. Thin liner, that is around 0.5 to 0.75 mm, of a light cured resin modified glass ionomer base is used in case of deeper caries excavations. Every completed tooth preparation should be inspected and cleaned before the restoration. The tooth preparation should be free of debris after rinsing the tooth with air water syringe. Now, what are the other conservative class 1 preparations? This includes cavities on the facial pit of the mandibular molar, the lingual pit of maxillary molars, the occlusal pit of the mandibular first premolar, the occlusal pit and fissures of the maxillary first molar, the occlusal pit and fissures of the mandibular second premolar. Now, coming to the extensive class 1 amalgam restoration. What is extensive restoration? A lesion is said to be extensive if the distance between the infected dentine and the pulp is judged to be less than 1 mm, when the facial-lingual extent of the defect is up the cuspal inclines. Now, how do we do the initial tooth preparation? It is done using a number 245 burr. Initial depth of 1.5 to 2 mm is maintained. The preparation is extended laterally to remove all the enamel undermined by caries. For caries extending up to the cuspal inclines, alter the burr's long axis to prepare 90 to 100 degree cavo surface angle while maintaining the initial depth. Now, what is the final tooth preparation stage? It includes remaining infected dentine removal. In case there is pulp exposure, direct pulp capping or root canal treatment can be advised. Calcium hydroxide liner may be placed in very deep carious excavation. Usually, no secondary resistance or retention form features will be required for an extensive class 1 amalgam preparation. Now, primary resistance form, it is obtained by extending the outline form of the tooth preparation to include only undermined and defective tooth structure while preparing strong enamel walls and allowing strong cuspal areas to remain. Primary retention is obtained by occlusal convergence of the enamel walls. First one is class 1 occlusal lingual amalgam restoration. It is used in maxillary molars when a lingual fissure which connects the distal oblique fissure and the distal pit on the occlusal surface. The initial tooth preparation involves the establishment of the outline form, primary resistance form, primary retention form, and the initial preparation depth. The tooth preparation should not be wider than necessary. Ideally, the mesiodistal width of the lingual extension should not exceed 1 mm. The tooth preparation should be cut more at the expense of the oblique ridge rather than centering over the fissure. Now, how do we do the lingual portion? In one technique, the lingual surface is prepared with the burr's long axis parallel with the lingual surface. The tip of the burr should be located at the gingival extent of the lingual surface. The facial inclination of the burr must be altered as the cutting progresses to establish the axial wall of the lingual portion at a uniform depth of 0.5 mm inside the dentino-enamel junction. The axial wall should follow the contour of the lingual surface of the tooth. Now next is class 1 occlusofacial amalgam restoration. Mandibular molars exhibit fissures that extend from the occlusal surface through the facial cuspal ridge onto the facial surface. Extend the facial ridge onto the facial surface. Prepare the facial surface portion of extension to cut with the side of the burr. Sharpen the line angles from occlusion direction with the number 169L burr. Retention locks are prepared with number 1/4 round burr. Coming to conclusion of the topic, with this we will understand what is the concept of class 1 cavity preparation and its application in operative dentistry. When we use this correctly and in properly selected cases, these restorations have the potential to serve for many years. These are the textbooks which we can use for reference, that is Sturdivant's Textbook of Operative Dentistry and Textbook of Operative Dentistry by Vimal Sikri. Thank you.